Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of Anime Brain Freeze. We are your triggered hosts.
I am John.
And I'm CC. And when there's just too much cool anime to watch, we got you covered. Another season comes to an end, and it's time to say goodbye to summer. But before we dive headfirst into the cozy anime leaf piles of fall, we have to review our final show from the hot months, and you know how much we love to go out on a true clusterfuck. Spoilers, we don't, but we kept this one for last anyway, because I have been dreading this review for a while. It's everyone's darling in the Franxx. And after that, we'll try our best to end on a positive note with our big four best anime of the season. But first things first, let's quickly talk about the shows we kicked to the curb this season in our Chop and Drop.
So, we gotta talk about what we decided we didn't feel like watching this season. It's that everyone's favorite, the Chop and Drop. Honestly, I picked up a lot less shows this season, so I only have one drop to speak of, and that is Cutie Honey Universe.
Yeah, I dropped that too after the first episode.
Yeah, I think I watched maybe 2 episodes, and I don't know a lot about Cutie Honey.
Oh, me either.
I've been wanting to watch, what was the OVA? Was it Re-Cutie Honey?
Yes.
Because I hear that one is fantastic, and it basically encapsulates the spirit of the original work perfectly from everything I hear. But I started to watch this, and I was just sort of like, yeah, this is kind of boring, and it don't look so good.
It also felt like you should be aware of what Cutie Honey is when watching this, because this feels like you need to have some pre-existing knowledge.
Yeah, there was some parts where I was kind of, wait, who, what now? Panther, what?
Yeah.
So that kind of left me in the lurch a bit, and I was just sort of like, I guess I don't need to watch it anyway.
Yeah, it felt kind of like that. Yeah, felt the same pretty much. I was like, okay, I have watched quite a bit of Cutie Honey Flash because it aired on TV over here, and I liked it. But getting into this, I felt like, okay, I should probably know more about this, and this doesn't feel like, I don't know, something as interesting as Devilman when it comes to Konagai stuff, or the more recent incarnation of that, Devilman Crybaby, which it's not a show I need to rewatch, but it was still very interesting. So yeah, drop that as well. But yeah, since I am a crazy person, I have picked up a lot more shows than you, and also thus dropped a lot more shows. So the first one...
Tell us.
Yeah, the first one...
tell us.
I bet you won't remember half of those from our sneak peek. Anyway,
you don't know that.
Yeah,
you don't know me.
So the first one is Last Hope by Shoji Kawamori. Max fighting giant beasts in a post-apocalyptic setting. Feel like this will come up again. It felt all very generic, from the animation and the CG to the characters. It just was really blah. Like the first episode that I watched didn't feel like it made that much sense and would go anywhere interesting. So yeah, I just didn't stick with it. Yeah, that was the first one. Next one is Devil's Line, which is about the special police force fighting vampires in modern day, while also having some of the bloodsuckers in their own ranks. And which is, a decent concept, but I really did not like the show, the look of the show. And, how it animated, the character designs and everything. It just felt really, I don't know, weird, off. I don't know, a bit, I don't want to call it dilettante or amateurish or something, but just felt, I don't know, something about it just didn't make me want to actually watch it. So that's a bad thing if we're talking about a TV show. So yeah, didn't work for me. And also I got something very similar, which was already on the horizon at that point, but much more visually appealing the very next season with Sirius the Jaeger, which, we will have a review of. So this one, Devil's Line, was an easy drop. And another show kind of along the same line was Tokyo Ghoul Ray, which is like the new iteration of Tokyo Ghoul. And I liked the first run of that series well enough, except for its ending, but I had forgotten pretty much everything about its characters and the story, so I was kind of overwhelmed when watching the first episode of Tokyo Ghoul Ray, because I had no idea who the fuck everyone is, and, I know there was a time jump and everything, but still I had no fucking grasp on what happened and where we were going from this point on and everything. So I would have had to rewatch the previous iteration again, and unlike with Full Metal Panic, I just didn't feel like it. It's like, okay, no, and there's another show that kind of that counts from summer season, and we'll get to that when we get to the chop and drop, in the next season. Yeah, and the last one that only I checked out and dropped was Dances with Dragons, which was kind of, I was really thinking about going back to it because it seemed like a decent buddy cop show in a fantasy setting with, two weird cops, also dragon slayers, whatever, with giant swords, and magic. But it just fell by the wayside, and I didn't pick it up again after a while. Like I said, what I saw was decent, funny, pretty sympathetic characters. It just got swept up in all the other stuff, and even we can only watch so many shows without losing our sanity. So
yeah,
Dances with Dragons just fell victim to serious overload, and yeah, so it's not the show's fault, in my opinion. Like I said, what I saw I liked, but there was just too much other stuff. So yeah, I gave it the X. And I think the only other show I didn't stick with was Gun Gale, but I talked about why in your review, John, so don't really need to elaborate on that. Oh yeah, and I still haven't decided if I will review Persona 5 the animation. The review for that would be due next season, but I'm only 2 episodes in, and apparently it really sucks.
From everything I've seen, it looks dreadful.
Yeah. But I was thinking it might be a really interesting showcase to dissect what you don't do when adapting long-ass RPGs or video games in general, and how the game is superior, and in what ways and everything. And since I finished the game twice, I might be able to, for once, sound like I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I'm one of those kinds of people who, I have made exceptions to this rule, but if there is a game, if there is an anime of it, play the game.
Yeah.
I think one of my big exceptions to the rule was Persona 4, because the anime adaptation was fine. It cut out, my favorite part of the game, which was the social links. But, of course, got to make cuts to a 100-hour game to fit it into, 12 hours? And I think the other one I started to watch was the Tales of Symphonia OVA series.
Those were right, although I didn't watch all of them. I think the adaptation for Tales of the Abyss was also decent, but I haven't really watched it. Yeah,
that was another one I skipped because I think I played the game at around the same time it was airing, and this was before. This was back in the dark ages when you had to hunt down your fan subs. There were no streaming services. Can you imagine? Can you imagine life without Crunchyroll?
Yeah, you new kids have it so good.
But yeah, my choice is usually, I will buy and play the game, just like I will eventually, hopefully, maybe someday, with Tales of Zestiria and Tales of Berseria. But I've heard things about Zestiria, but I'm still curious about it. So
yeah, actually, we reviewed Zestiria the Cross, on this show. And that was a flawed show, definitely. But, in terms of game adaptations, I would account its flaws mostly to the story of the actual game, not necessarily of the adaptation. Though I don't know, because I haven't played the game. Maybe the game, does some things better. But at least the animation that was stellar, because it was ufotable, so. But yeah, usually you fare better with the game. And we'll probably talk about that more if I actually end up reviewing Persona 5. But we'll see if I can actually force my way through an apparently much inferior version of what is now one of my favorite games of all time. If it will be too painful, I don't know. You'll find out in a couple of weeks or not. Anyway, that's it. And now time to get this over with. It's Franxx time.
Go.
So it finally has come to this, huh?
Yeah, so, Darling in the Franxx, one of the most highly anticipated shows of winter/spring season, turned into one of the biggest disappointments, at least for some people, me included. So yeah, let's talk about what happened. First, I would say let's get the story setup out of the way. Darling in the Franxx is set in a post-apocalyptic future where humanity has been driven close to extinction by giant beasts named Klaxosaurs. Taking a refugee in giant mobile fortresses called plantations and being guided by an organization called Ape and their leader Father, they utilize a giant mecha called Franxx, named after their creator, Dr. Franxx. These machines require a special set of pilots called parasites, always a girl and a boy, respectively designated as Pistol and Stamen. The Pistol becomes the consciousness and driving force of the Franxx, while the Stamen maintains the manual control unit. And the plot follows the story of Hero, who at the beginning of the show is considered a failure without much hope of ever becoming a real Franxx pilot, and thus feels a lack of purpose and doesn't know where he belongs. And all that changes when he stumbles across the strange and very forward girl 02, who is very interested in him for several reasons. And upon becoming his new partner, enables him to actually become the best Franxx pilot in his class. But that is not the only major change in Hero's and his classmates' life that 02's arrival incites. Very slowly, the secrets and deeper mysteries of their world begin to unravel and lead to several turns of events that not only threaten them, but the entire rest of humanity. To overcome these terrifying odds, they have to learn the meaning of a word they were never taught: love. So this series was co-produced by Studio Trigger and A1 Pictures. We have mentioned both studios before. A1 did Sword Art, among other things. This season we talked about them in the Nanatsu no Taizai and Wotakai reviews. I think those were the two, right?
Yep.
Studio Trigger is mostly well known for Kill la Kill and Little Witch Academia, and when a lot of their stuff still worked at Gainax, they worked on Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann. And I think A1 has a lot of ex-Gainax crew as well, so yeah, those work together in this case, made sense. Both of this will come into play later for certain reasons. As far as I can tell from recent interviews regarding the show, Trigger handled most of the pre-production and all that entails, and A1 did most of the actual production animation work, although there is some overlap in certain departments like character and creature design, and some episodes were animated by Trigger as well. But yeah, that's how it was mostly split up. It seems the strongest creative force behind this project was its director, Atsushi Nishigori, who also handled the series composition and parts of the script together with Naotaka Hayashi, who is probably most well known for being the writer of Steins Gate, the original visual novel. And I think he did the series composition for the anime adaptation. Nishigori, the director, also worked as a director on an Idolmaster movie. I assume there are several ones, but I've only seen one in his repertoire.
As far as I know, there's just the one Idolmaster movie.
Okay, so then he did that one Idolmaster movie. He also worked as a key animator for Space Patrol Luluko and Kill la Kill, as an episode director on Die Buster, and as an animation director for Little Witch Academia, Panty and Stocking, and Gurren Lagann. The latter two he also did the character designs for. So he has worked on a lot of big-name shows. And just in terms of visuals, the direction in this show is really, really solid, really good. There are a lot of visually interesting shots in this show, a lot of great backgrounds, great moody shots, great lighting. The animation itself is, as expected, mostly great. The action choreography in certain scenes is stellar. All the giant battles, all the stuff, like when exploding mech action happens, the show looks really good. The character designs and designs of the Klaxosaurs are pretty good. I'm not too fond of the design of the Franxx. They all look like this weird amalgamation of Hero Man and the mechs from Star Driver, like these very complex shapes for the bodies in certain parts. Very
Star Driver. That's a name I haven't heard in a minute.
Yeah, there's a reason for that.
Well, yes, but now that you're saying it, I see what you're getting at, because I don't know why I didn't think of that when I watched the show. It's like, there's something about this.
Yeah.
Aside from the obvious, but go on, please.
Yeah, but, the main mech of the Strelitzia is very, very reminiscent of certain parts of the main mech from Star Driver, and the eyes on all of the mechs, these giant anime eyes, are completely reminiscent of Hero Man. Yeah, like I said, very kind of complex shapes on the actual mech bodies, and these huge anime eyes. It's weird. It's just one of the many instances of tonal dissonance in the show, because these feel like they belong in a completely different, much more cartoony and wacky show. Or at least parts of them do, like the faces. Like some of, the bodies could be maybe in a different show, but like these weird giant anime eyes feels like they belong in something like Gurren Lagann or Hero Man. There we go. For example, And speaking of Gurren Lagann, you'll probably hear me say this name several more times during this review, by the way, so maybe make this a drinking game. Take a shot every time you hear me say Gurren Lagann. Maybe.
Don't do that to the people listening.
I don't know. Everyone, if we're going to have a miserable time talking about the show, you can at least have some fun while, drinking to it. I don't know. Anyway.
Oh, boy.
But yeah, aside from the weird mechs, the show looks really, really good. Probably the best thing about the show are its design and animation. Another positive thing to highlight is the soundtrack by Asami Tachibana, who we have talked about on this show before as well. She did the music for Seraph of the End, Haikyuu, and Gundam Build Fighters Try, among other things. And I really like her style. And she once again delivers some really stunning tracks for Franxx, from the more sad, sober stuff to the riveting, emotional rock orchestra tracks for some of the battle scenes and key emotional moments of the show. She's probably the MVP of this series. Yeah, if only the story and characters of this show were as interesting, consistent, and emotionally engaging as the music tries to paint them, this would not have been one of the few redeeming features of this dumpster fire of a show. But alas. So let's not further beat around the bush and dig into what made this show fall apart so violently. Darling in the Franxx, while having a pretty intriguing setup, is a very problematic show in more ways than one. Also, I will spoil a few moments in the show because I need to tell you why the show didn't work. Just be aware of that. So, yeah, the biggest offenders are the show's world building, its characters, its theming, and its inconsistent tone. That's quite a lot. So, let's talk about the characters first. Most of them are your typical anime stereotypes. Hero is the cardboardiest main protagonist Kun that you can imagine. 02 is almost a carbon copy of Asuka from Evangelion. Not only she, but also a lot of shots in that show are almost carbon copies of certain scenes in Evangelion and Gurren Lagann, which, you could call it an homage, but, at what point do you turn your show into a ripoff? I don't know. It's eerie. It's really close in certain parts. And the other characters are best friend of Hero, childhood friend of Hero, and also his second love interest, loud spunky boy character, loud spunky girl character, fat nice boy, quiet nice girl, and cold boy. You get the picture. You have seen these people before in many other shows, and Franxx tries to do some interesting stuff with some of them, but never really succeeds in developing them much beyond their initial key characteristics. Yes, there are some changes in the character's behavior and motivation, but a lot of these feel purely plot-driven, and at a certain point, most of the character development just gets entirely dropped for the sake of bringing the story to a close, which is a shame. Because, like I said, there was potential there. The theming and tone are another reason Franxx doesn't really come together, and like I said, completely falls apart in its last quarter or last third. Now, the show takes itself very seriously. The character drama, the mysteries, the battles, the show is being dead serious about most of that stuff, and also about the general themes and topics it discusses. The most prominent of those themes, and you only have to look at the cockpits of the mechs to know this, to be aware of this, to become aware of this, is of course romantic and sexual relationships. From the teenagers not knowing anything about love and slowly growing aware of their unfamiliar feelings, and having to come to terms with and learn to verbalize them, to the simple thing of the mech's cockpits being designed in a way that basically makes the characters fuck doggy style every time they ride into battle. I'm not exaggerating. That's what it is.
It's one thing to have a cockpit like in I don't know, Zone of the Enders.
Yeah.
It's another thing to have a cockpit.
Yeah. It's more of it's a fuck pit. Both of those. Anyway. So yeah, the show is constantly bombarding us with metaphors for sex, gender, and different kinds of relationships in its first 2/3, which in itself is super interesting in my opinion. A lot of mech shows have played around with that subject before, but mostly in a lighthearted comedy action-driven way. For example, Aquarian, Godanar, or Vendred come to mind. And I watched the latter two of those, and I really enjoyed them. Godanar is probably one of my favorite mech shows of all time. It's really enjoyable, it's really fun. Cool characters and everything, and yeah, it's a fun ride all the way through. Vendred has been a long time. It's one of the first anime I watched fan subbed, so I don't know if it would hold up if I watched again, but I remember really liking it when I watched it. So a show trying to go the serious route with those kind of topics for once felt refreshing in the beginning, and did hold some great potential for interesting character development and discussions. The problem is Franxx doesn't do anything interesting with it. In the end, the message of Franxx boils down to, yo, you better fall in love and have kids, because that is what makes you a human being and should be the true purpose in your life. Which feels like an incredibly ham-fisted propaganda message for nuclear family planning for the Japanese audience. And... considering Japan has had a lot of trouble with dropping birth rates and everything, it doesn't sound too far-fetched for someone trying to use a medium aimed at maybe one of the more problematic groups in that regard to get their shit together and start a family instead of fawning over cute anime girls all the time.
What?
What?
Come on.
Crazy talk.
But I love my waifu.
Also about that, apparently, judging from your Twitter output.
Shut up.
Hey, it's all fine, man. Hey, I'm not kink-shaming here. I mean, there have been some benign cases of these kind of pretty obvious propaganda shows. Silver Spoon, for example, which is pretty much a show with the only goal to tell you how awesome and important the Japanese countryside is to that nation and its people. But man, Franxx just feels either really misguided, naive, mishandled, or even a bit sinister, depending on how you look at it, when it comes to propagating its message. And most of that shines through in the ways some of the characters are portrayed in the beginning and the things being outright said in the show. For example, Kokoro, the nice, quiet girl, doesn't really understand it at first, but her biological clock starts ticking very loudly at a certain point in the show, and she wants to become a mom. She doesn't know what it means, because, the kids in that show have not been told what sex is, what, being a parent is, that they even can become parents, anything like that. They don't even know where they came from and, what all that looks like and everything. Nobody has talked about this because that's not how humanity reproduces in that world and everything. So the children don't know anything about that, which makes it all the more weird that you get, these classic, typical anime scenes where the boys oogle the girls and the girls say, no, you're not supposed to do that. That's lewd. How do they fucking know that? Like, how do they fucking know that if nobody told them that is a bad thing?
Yeah, I remember hearing about that because I dropped this show very early.
Yeah.
But I remember hearing that and I was like, what? This sounds stupid. How does that doesn't make a lick of sense in the context the show is setting up for itself.
Exactly, that's the problem. The show doesn't even stick to its own rules. For the sake of drawing from these typical anime cliches that probably the target audience is expecting to be in there. So the problem is just in this kind of context, in this kind of show, like you said, that those scenes don't make a lick of sense. So that's one of those problems. So like I said, Kokoro, she wants to be a mom. She doesn't know what it means, but she stumbles over an old book and reads about classic childbirth and and parenthood. She finds that book in some kind of ruins. Like I said, that doesn't exist in this world anymore, but she wants that. She doesn't know why, but she looks at those pages and what she's told in those pages, and she knows only one thing: she wants that. So when she confronts one of her superiors and tries to find out the truth about all of that, they tell her that this was deemed an inferior way of reproducing and not necessarily for humanity. Humanity has grown beyond that or something like that, right? To which she replies, quote, "But why do we still have reproductive organs? Why do we still have emotions?" Heavily implying that your emotions only exist to find a mate and reproduce because that is all human beings should strive for. That is the ultimate goal. And the show drives that home so hard for the rest of its runtime, shoves it into our faces to the very last episode, to almost the very last moment of its runtime, where the characters are basically saying, hey, you can only be truly human and only lead a truly worthwhile existence, a truly fulfilling life, if you live in unison with someone else. Only then your soul can truly shine. Otherwise, you might not be human at all. And that just feels like such a perverted, twisted play on its cliched love conquers all message that it did not sit well with me at all. It felt wrong. It felt bad. It felt like, no, I don't like this. I don't like what you're saying, show. I don't like what you're trying to pull here. I don't know if it's intentional or accidental, but either you are not aware of what you are saying, or you are aware, and that's worse. That's really, really bad in regards to, some people out there who have chosen a different way of life, or maybe are not even able to get someone even if they want to. And you're discrediting their, right for, or their value as a human being with statements like that. And that sucks. Like, saying you lose all your value as a human being if you don't connect and multiply is super fucked up, in my opinion. That did not gel with me at all. I don't know, how do you feel about that? I mean, you have watched the show, so you cannot really attest to that being in there. But, just from the sentence I quoted and everything, what are your impressions on that?
No, yeah, that's fucked up. If you want to get yourself into a relationship and have kids, whatever your orientation or whatever you identify as, fine. If you just want to, you do you and live your best life, fine. Like, you don't need to have someone shove their ideologies down your throat like, this show seems to want to do with its characters and by extension to its audience. That's like, fuck off. I just want to live my life the way I want to.
And I don't think, maybe it does, but I don't think it's outright condemning people for not doing that. I mean, I think some of the characters at the end of the shows are not in a relationship, but it's always hell-bent on telling you that this is the right way, this is the proper way, and this is for you. It's for you. The show is thinking of you. It only wants your best. Like, this is the best way for you. This is how you live a happy life. Don't you understand? Come on. And it's just, man, I don't know. That's just, it's problematic. And in my opinion, it only gets more problematic if you take a more thorough look at some of the other characters. Like Mitsuru, for example, who's the cold reserve boy I mentioned before, who apparently really looked up to Hiro and always wanted to be his partner, piloting a Franxx with him instead of a girl partner. Now, you can call this reading too much into all of this, but in a show that is, all about sex and relationships and that has literal fuck pits, that to me can mean nothing else than Mitsuru is the metaphorical gay character. Which, again, interesting setup and potential, but is severely mishandled by the show. Be it by accident or intention. He's very unhappy because Hiro doesn't really return his feelings, either because he doesn't share them or doesn't know that Mitsuru has these feelings or can't really interpret them. and doesn't know how to react to that. Yeah, so that's a big point of tension between those two in the beginning. And when 02 enters the picture and everything, because Mitsuru still has these lingering emotions, starting from when they were kids. Like, he was always like running behind Hiro and was looking up to him and everything. It's like, when I grow up, I want to be your partner in Franxx, and you promised me to do that and stuff like that. So yeah, that feels all very, I don't know, clear to me when matched with the rest of the themes of the show. But then at a certain point in the story, Mitsuru completely abandons these emotions by basically saying he was just confused. And then he begins a relationship with Kokoro, and in the end, spoilers, finds true happiness as a husband to a good woman and father of 4 kids. Which is a really problematic message, and
that's some borderline conversion therapy shit.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That did also not sit right with me. The show basically saying, man, you might have this feeling, but if you push them down and decide to live a normal life, then you can be happy too. And he is happy in the end when he finds his real true love and his real purpose in life, right? And just any of that feels so misguided and either really naive without knowing. I don't want to outright say that the show has bad intentions. I am willing to accept that the people who made this weren't really aware of what they were saying with some of the stuff they put in there. But they are saying it to a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And I've seen a lot of people interpret it that way. Not only one person, a bunch of people who didn't like this. And there's a reason for that, because the show is so overt when it comes to those things. But either the people behind this didn't know what they were saying with that, or what this would say to people who are gay or of a different gender or whatever. And yeah, that either it was that or it was intentional, and then it's really bad. Then it's really problematic. Then we're talking about, like you said, some borderline right-wing conservative fucking get a normal family, you weird freak messaging. And I really hope that isn't it. I really hope it. I really hope it's just people being dumb, like really not knowing what they're saying with this. And that's it. Just a misguided, naive approach to the whole subject matter.
I don't know, considering how poignant a lot of it sounds.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I didn't make the show. I can only talk about what I saw and how it, how it seemed to me, how it affected me, and how it spoke to me, and how it spoke to a lot of other people. And that's what it did. And it is problematic. But hey, if you say, as a viewer, people are imagining things here, reading too much into it, nothing of that matters to you, you only care about the action and story, that is valid too. Sure. Like, fucking blur that all out, don't think about it. Does Franxx still have to offer something in those other departments? The answer is no. because speaking of story, and this is where the world building comes into play as well, Franxx feels very uneven and hacky in both those departments as well. Like I said, the action is alright, it's good, up to a certain point, but the story also a problem. Especially the pacing is a big mess. The first 2/3 of the series are pretty much spent entirely on the character drama. We have 02 join the class of Franxx pilots, and all the drama and changes in behavior that brings along for all the characters is pretty much the focus for a lot of its runtime. Hiro's relationship to 02, how she treats him and the rest of the group, how his second love interest Ichigo and a lot of the other characters react to that, and how all of this affects them piloting the Franxx and fighting the Klaxosaurs. We only get clued in very, very slowly on the world these teenagers inhabit, and basically learn nothing about the bigger picture, where the Franxx and Klaxosaurs really come from, how the world came to be the way it is currently is, what ape is all about, why people don't seem to have normal relationships and reproduce the traditional way anymore. None of this is really explained at all. Until episode 19, which is a 20-minute something giant exposition dump, where we learn pretty much all of the lore and background information we were denied before in a single swoop.
Oh, that's good writing.
Yeah, that's amazing, right?
Jesus.
Like, okay, granted, most of the stuff you could see coming a mile away, because, like I said, that show is not averse to copying a lot of stuff from the things that came before it. But still, it feels like a really bad decision to dump this revelation on the audience in a single episode, all in the form of a flashback sequence narrated by Dr. Franxx, a character we don't give a single fuck about, by the way, before or after this flashback, because he sucks. So, he's an asshole. So, having him tell us all of this is like, oh, great, I have to listen to this character I don't care about for 20 minutes talking about all the shit that happened before this. Couldn't you have done this like sooner and paced and spread out more evenly? Like, what the fuck? 2/3 into the show, we get all the answers to our most burning questions at once in the most inelegant way possible. Or so we think.
Oh, no.
Because exactly one episode later, in episode 20, all of that gets turned on its head, and the true bad guys and history of the world get revealed, and the final act of the show kicks into motion. And this is also the part where the show lost any ability of keeping me engaged in its story or characters, because everything that happens from this moment on completely negates, nullifies, and renders anything that happens up to this point void and meaningless. All the character drama, all the themes that we talked about earlier, everything gets thrown away, and the show turns into a Gurren Lagann ripoff. And this is where I have to get into heavy spoiler territory, because to elaborate on why this doesn't work, I have to talk about some of the things that happen here. So it turns out the true evil masterminds were aliens. And they come out of nowhere, kinda. They're like, hey, we have been here before, and we like tried to destroy the Earth, and the people who later turned to the Klaxosaurus, like, we forced them underground, but they forced us back and everything. But now we're back, and we're gonna destroy you, because we want the entire universe to be a sentient amalgamation of souls without bodies and everything. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Like, everything is supposed to be peaceful. That's why we do this. Which is, their answer to that is like, okay, if you don't want to do that, we're going to destroy your entire planet. That's not very peaceful at all. What, you hypocritical assholes. Shut the fuck up. Anyway. So that's not consistent either. So yeah, but they were the true mastermind. They're called the Worm. And yeah, the entire last act of the show is the characters going into space and fighting them. Kinda. Or it's like only 2 episodes where they do that. And then, we get like this prolonged episode with Hero and 02 in space fighting the aliens, and the other characters on Earth trying to rebuild society. Like, yeah, that's what happens. And the space stuff could be cool, but it doesn't at all fit the tone or theming of the rest of the show and everything that came before it. Also, most of the characters become completely irrelevant at this point. They are only there for emotional support for Hero and 02. They have no real agency beyond that. They have no real part in the final battle. They're only there. They don't have any interesting fight moment. If you remember Gurren Lagann, there's like almost every fucking character goes out with a bang, has a highlight moment like that, shows, holy shit, yeah, that was an awesome moment and an awesome way for that character to go out. Like, even the minor characters in that show, nothing like that in this. They're not even, like I said, no highlight moments, no deaths of important characters even. 2 characters dies on screen, both of them are assholes, who the show tries to turn into something good, but that doesn't work. We don't give a shit about them, and when they die, it's more hilarious or blah than, emotional. So, fuck that.
Jeez.
And none of the important characters, die, which, is kind of nice, but still, in the beginning of the show, it felt like some of the characters, their deaths were very heavily telegraphed. Like, a lot of people were talking about death flags and everything, and none of that comes to fruition. None of the characters get any kind of important emotional moment in this final battle or any form of catharsis whatsoever. We only get Hero and 02, who finally find true love and unite to fight the common enemy as one single robot thing. The problem is they already did that at the midpoint of the show. And don't get me wrong, that moment was pretty good, as was the backstory of their relationship. That was probably the only point where I was really emotionally engaged, and I really liked those moments. But we already had our cathartic moment for them at that part of the show. So this, the climax of the show, all feels like a rehash that doesn't have any meaning whatsoever. It's just like, oh, we're doing this again. All right, okay. And yeah, add to that the ridiculous over-the-top feel of the show's finale, which could have worked in a show like Gurren Lagann, like I said, because the show did that like all the way through. Like Gurren Lagann is a crazy, cartoony nonsense fest. But it doesn't work here because Franxx wasn't that in the beginning. It was very serious. It was really misguided as they were, or sinister as they were, really trying to bring across these like kind of, you know, heavy themes and messages, and was trying to talk about them and discuss them. There was really like heavy character drama and everything. And the atmosphere was really dark because of post-apocalyptic stuff. You know, these kids not knowing where they came from and everything. It just all felt really dire and, you know, and serious and sober. And then they get into this really, really weird, typical, you know, trigger over-the-top nonsense stuff in the end. And it does not fit. It does not connect with the rest of the show. And that's what I mean when I say about, you know, when I talked about inconsistent tone earlier. And the show is full of that. But all of that comes to a head at the end of the show, where like all of this culminates into this weird blah that doesn't fit. That just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It doesn't work here. Also, 02 looks really stupid in her final form. She turns into this giant mech with a human face and like human torso that basically looks like a giant metal space bride with a veil at the back of her helmet and everything. I was like, when I saw it, I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Oh yeah, Hiro has made her a space bride with his love. And now they can have their space marriage. And their space honeymoon is fucking killing all the verm. Yeah, thank you very much. What? What the fuck? I lost my mind when watching this. Like this, this is not how, you cannot end the show this way. Are you serious? I mean, I had a lot of problems with the show in the beginning, but it was at least interesting. This is just ridiculous. You cannot take any of this seriously, but the show is so desperately trying to do that until the very end, drenched in pathos and emotions that don't mean anything to us because we don't care about these characters anymore. And yeah, nothing matters, and it's just getting ridiculous and over the top, and it doesn't fit. Yeah, it's a shame. It's so messed up. There's no payoff, no satisfying wrap-up to any of this. Nothing that has been built up beyond love and baby's good, alone bad, gets brought up again. Anything about the setup and the mysteries and lore behind this world that, you know, was remotely interesting, and all the slim possibilities of doing something worthwhile with these characters just completely evaporates into a puff of smoke. Or I should probably say a wet lung subdued fart. It feels like a mess of haphazard rewrites that like led to this rushed and soulless conclusion. So even excluding all the possibly problematic, but at least interesting subtextual stuff that is in that show, even disregarding all of the shitty attitude that is lingering under the surface, whether you want to address it or not, or whether you see it or not, or think it is there or not, the show just ends up being a bland, mishandled clusterfuck regardless, in all other aspects. And hey, if you are completely ripping off Gurren Lagann with your twist, both in terms of plot devices and imagery, at least try to get up to par with Lagann in terms of staging or action choreography or something. But the show can't even do that. The final battle, like of Hiro and 02 against the worm, is boring as shit. Like nothing interesting to look at. Like I said, the other characters don't do anything at all. It's weird, it's boring, and it doesn't fit at all. It's bad. It's really bad. Like, Evangelion and Lagann are the obvious inspiration for the series, but both those shows did a much better job in their respective fields than this weird melange of tones and themes did. That's almost all I can say about it. I think I've ranted about this show long enough, and I think at this point it's pretty obvious why this show failed so hard and fell fell so flat on its fucking face or ass in the end, and why I didn't like it. I watched it through to the end, of course I did, but
I still can't believe you actually did. I'm so sorry.
I needed to know. I needed to know how it ends.
You know what? That's fair, because that's going to be me next season with a certain show. Oh, boy!
I'm looking forward to that then. I wonder if you're going to come away from it as I did from Franxx.
I wonder if I'll get through all 4 course of it.
Oh, boy. Okay. What could it be? Okay, we'll see. Anyway. All right. So, yeah, I can't really say about Franxx. I can just say what irked me beyond all this weird story bullshit that came at the end, all the nonsense that didn't fit together. What irked me personally the most in the show was the show constantly yelling in our face, hey, your soul can only shine in unison with another soul. You need to be someone's wings. And the ending is a baby fest and drives home the get married, fuck, and have children or all is lost and you won't be human anymore message. And you can right fuck off with that, Franxx. Fuck off all the way to a different solar system like your bland main protagonists did. And nobody will give a shit about you either. Yeah. And that's it. Those are my final words on Darling in the Franxx. Don't watch it. You are not missing out by skipping this one. It starts out with enough potential, but it doesn't deliver on any of that in any way possible. It's just a giant pile of nothing. That's what it is. And that's it. And that's it. And now let's get to something positive, because there's still one thing we have to do, and I need something positive right now. Best of the season. So yeah, after this horrible thing, let's talk about the things we actually liked this season. So John, why don't you tell us what was your favorite anime this season? I have my suspicions, but we'll see what you ended up actually choosing.
Do you though? I wonder. I mean, there were 3 shows.
Same for me.
There were 2 shows I really enjoyed a lot, and a third that was, I guess, to a lesser extent. And I guess we can kind of count backwards from the quote unquote least to the quote unquote most. Because I walked away from SAO Alternative and I thought, it was really enjoyable. It, focused on playing the game like, the core Sword Art should have done after the whole death game aspect. It's funny because I decided on a lark once upon a time to pick up a copy of Sword Art Online Lost Song. And once you know it, that game is about playing the game.
Ridiculous.
So when it sticks to its theming and when, a different person is writing it, Sword Art can be good, I dare say. But, that's number 3. I'd say number 2. I think this is where I might throw you off. Number 2 is Wotakoi. Because,
okay. You did.
It was a fun...
I expect this to be your number 1.
I gotta spice it up a bit.
Okay.
It was a fun slice of life show that was very earnest in its execution, and that it's what I'm looking for in these sort of romance stories, like stuff like this. Like, I don't know how many times I can run it into the ground, but stuff like Recovery of an MMO Junkie, that sort of thing, where it's geared to older people, and I just really liked it a lot. But the real number 1 for me this season came out of nowhere. I didn't expect much out of it, but I had a ton of fun watching it. It was Golden Kamuy.
Huh. Oh, there we go.
This show looked bad. I won't make any bones about the production of the show because the animation is garbage. But it was just so much fun to watch because the characters were all really interesting and funny. It told me some interesting stuff about the Ainu people. gold rush for a treasure that may or may not exist really hooked me, and I'm looking forward to more of it. Spoilers are going to be watching it next season.
Definitely.
But yeah, Golden Kamuy, for all of its foibles, really stuck out for me this season, and I can't wait for more of it. That out of the way, Cece, why don't you tell us why Darling in the Franxx was your pick for the season?
Oh, let me tell you about Darling in the Franxx. It's the best show that... No, it never happened. Anyway, yeah, I like Golden Kamuy 2 a lot, but that, weirdly enough, didn't make it in my top 3, kind of. Because, it might still be, but I still want to see where the story goes.
Yeah.
I like I said, I really enjoyed it, but there were 3 shows that I enjoyed more, and I had to narrow it down a bit sometimes. So, yeah. So this was a 3-way race between Full Metal Panic, Invisible Victory, Food Wars, Third Plate, and Yomamushi Pedal. I enjoyed all of these shows a lot, man, and this was really tough. But I think I'm gonna give it to Food Wars this time, because this has probably been its strongest season, in my opinion. Full Metal Panic profited a lot from, my nostalgia for it, and the new season itself was a bit of a mixed bag. There was a lot of stuff that I liked in there, a lot of payoff for, nostalgia payoff. Like I said, putting the main themes in there and everything, and bring all the characters back, all the voice actors back, all of that is great. Animation wasn't really good. That's problematic. And, the overly dark tone and everything, which I understand, because they have to bring the story to a conclusion. And from the setup alone, it's kind of a dark story. So, yeah, but still, it's like, okay, I miss some of the stuff that was in the earlier Full Metal Panic. So, yeah, still like the show a lot. I still hope we get, an actual conclusion for this story. I don't think a 4th season has been announced yet. So, yeah, holding my breath. But yeah, I liked it. But ultimately, I don't think I'm going to give it to that. Yomamushi Pedal, this 4th season was also really good too, but I maybe like the 1st and 2nd season a bit more. I mean, I love this one as well, don't get me wrong, but maybe just a little teensy-weensy bit less. But yeah, man, Food Wars started maybe a bit slow, but finished really strong, aside, from the fact that the season is not really finished at all, and we ended up on a ginormous cliffhanger.
Yeah, but that's my main issue with it too, because I if there's more to come, sure, but I want a logical endpoint from my shows. Is my problem.
I get that, but for me, it's like, okay, I know Food Wars is successful enough. I'm gonna get a conclusion to this, and the other 2 shows I picked, Yomamushi Pedal and FMP, kind of did the same. Someone else. I mean, Full Metal Panic story is not finished, and it ends kind of on a big cliffhanger too. And Yomamushi Pedal ends in the middle of a fucking race. So, yeah, I can't really subtract that from Food Wars' score if the other shows did that too. And man, this season did so many things right. Just because the sheer ridiculousness of Asami Nakiri's food fascism. If this award was only about the strongest villain, he'd of course have to duke it out with Akira Midosuji from Yomamushi Pedal, but everything surrounding Asami's ambitions and what that kicks into gear in terms of the plot of the season of Food Wars and how ridiculously dramatic it gets, and, the development of Erina and, all the characters around it, and some twists and turns here, and all the ridiculous imagery that gets cranked up to 11 was just the funnest and funniest shit to me. So yeah, Food Wars, you get the award. Good on you. You deserve it. I mean, we didn't have best of the season when I reviewed the first 2 seasons, so this feels kind of a long time coming. So, yeah, I'll give it to Food Wars, the 3rd plate.
Yeah.
And looking forward to the next season for that too, of course. Just like with Golden Kamuy and, the other shows we mentioned, because none of those are finished.
There's so many other shows coming back in fall, too. I don't know how I'll be able to make room for new stuff.
Yeah, we'll see. I still have to finish some of the stuff from summer. I'm not done yet. So, yeah. But, yeah, that's it. We probably have talked long enough for this episode already. I definitely have, as usual. So, yeah. See you guys soon for the fall sneak peek and summer reviews. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.
And that is a wrap on the 59th episode of Anime Brain Freeze. All the music in our show is from the Double Dragon Neon soundtrack by the amazing Jake Kaufman. Please go to virt.bandcamp.com and check out his awesome work. Our show is available on most of the popular podcast services, but it's always worth visiting animebrainfreeze.com for some interesting articles linked in our episode release posts. Follow us on Twitter at AnyBrainFreeze. We tweet regular updates and fun anime-related stuff there. Leave us comments and questions on Facebook and our YouTube channel, or send an email to animebrainfreeze@gmail.com. We would love to read your feedback. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you had a good time, and please join us again on our next show. Macht's gut.
So long, everyone.
Next time on Anime Brain Freeze.
Who will prevail?
One for all.
Or all for one?
We'll find out as we witness the dawn
Of a new age of heroes.